Alrighty, friends. Welcome to our guest speaker this month, Brittany Qynn. I'm saying that correctly, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I always love to double check because sometimes, there's different pronunciations and I never want to get it wrong. But she is our guest speaker this month, all about mental health and wellness. And we are so excited to have her. We met, a couple years ago? Gosh, time goes really fast, but like I think maybe 2 years ago at First Form. You're going to share your background with us, but that's how we got connected because we were both part of that program as far as helping people, with health and wellness through, those products and those services. But you tell us, give us an introduction of who you are, what you do, family, profession. Just give us your background story so we know who we're getting to know and who we're getting to learn from.
All right. So yes, I'm Brittany. I'm a licensed professional counselor in South Carolina. I'm also a certified mental health and nutrition clinical specialist. So I do have that extra certification, just because I understand just how important nutrition and fitness is to mental health and how interconnected they are. So I live in South Carolina with my husband and my 5-year-old son, Rise. He gives me a run for my money, that's for sure.
Mhm.
I have a private practice. So I do that actually all virtually. I used to have in office. And then right when I had my son was when everything with COVID hit and everything shut down. And then everything went virtual. So I was actually able to continue my private practice doing virtual sessions while I had, the newborn. And then that just kept going because everyone got so used to virtual everything. It was much more convenient. I was able to see more people because people could be doing counseling sessions on their lunch break. Scheduling just became so much more flexible doing it virtually. And so I just never went back to in person.
It makes a
So
ton of
now
sense.
yep, I do part-time, complete virtual therapy sessions.
Awesome. And how did you get connected with I mean, obviously the counseling is your main profession, but with the health and wellness side, are you personally into, tell us a little bit about your fitness background? Because I know a little bit, but share with everyone.
So yeah, I have always fitness and nutrition has always been a big part of my life. It's gone through its different seasons in terms of how it was a part of my life. Um, and like if I could go back, I love what I do. I always said if I could go back, I would do something in regards to fitness and nutrition and all of that, like on an educational level, like in school degree setting kind of thing. Which is why I've worked so hard on getting those extra certifications to incorporate it into my private practice and really specialize in that. I've always been really interested in eating disorder treatment and disordered eating, because I'm in recovery from an eating disorder. And so I understand that history. So all through school, my undergrad and my master's degree as much as possible, I always geared my research and papers towards eating disorders. In fact, I used to, when they do group projects, a lot of people used to not like group projects, or they would be like, oh, like I always end up doing all the work and everyone else slacks off. I used to take that and run with it. I actually used to, if we had a group project for in my undergrad, um, I would go find the people that sat in the back and looked like they didn't pay attention and didn't want to do anything. And I'd be like, yo, if you team up with me, I get to pick this is the deal. I get to pick the topic. I'll do all of the work and I'll give you a great
They're
peer
like,
review.
this is the best thing ever. Yeah.
Yes. I used to give them scripts. And so then I was able to choose eating disorders kind of as that topic. And they didn't care because they didn't have to do anything. So, and so I really got to dive into that. And so I just kind of like took that and ran with it. And then as I've gotten older, I just found fitness being such a great outlet. And then learning about like proper nutrition and like how nutrition impacts our mental health as well. And so I just kind of kept going with it and just tried to evolve it, not only on a personal level, but professionally as well.
I love it. And honestly, that's one of the reasons, like when I was trying to think who could I bring in to the community that has, valuable information to share. You're one of the first people I thought of because you do such a good job. And I will share all your contact information with everyone in the community, on this video as well. So that they can go follow you on Instagram. And you do such a good job of bringing the mental health piece to the forefront because I think a lot of times it's not, I was telling my husband this morning, it's not that people don't have the ability to choose healthy food or the ability to go to a workout. Sometimes it's the mental piece that is literally the the hurdle that they're trying to get over and over, and that's sometimes like a blockade. And so that's why I just think what you do is so important, and I love that you specialize in that because even in my own home, and I know a lot of ladies in our community, this is something that they struggle with for sure, the disordered eating. So what we'll dive into just the two member questions that we had first, and then we'll go through some of the other topics. But kind of going through the emotional eating and binge cycles, I'm gonna just read the questions so I don't get it wrong. But how would you recommend coping with binge eating while on a health and wellness journey?
So the first part of that is really for that person to be able to commend themselves on recognizing that that is an issue, because I think that a lot of times, sometimes people either don't recognize it's an issue or it's kind of a roadblock on accepting that it's an issue. Um, and so one thing would just be in the moment, really starting to become mindful of whether or not it's going to be a physical versus an emotional hunger. Because the physical hunger is going to be like when we're obviously very hungry. And sometimes when we are really hungry, that can kind of lead to more like binge feeling like episodes of like, oh, I just need to eat all this stuff like because I'm starving. Or is it that emotional hunger? Are you trying to feed something deeper? And so really understanding first, like, is it physical hunger? Am I actually really hungry? Or is it emotional hunger? And if it is an emotional hunger, looking at what is that food serving you? Like, what is that? It's filling a void, right? So when we kind of get triggered for a binge eating episode, it tends to be like a lot of times we're like super emotional, we're super upset about something. It's just like, oh my gosh, like I just need, it's that emotional hunger, right? What is that food filling? What is that serving you? And understanding like what need that is fulfilling for you is going to be kind of like a key piece of information on how to replace that
Mm.
behavior so that like, okay, this is the feeling I'm feeling. This is what the food does for me, whether it's that dopamine hit, whether it's just like I can just like forget everything. Then you have kind of a starting point as to, okay, what do I do instead?
Interesting.
Um,
So, like, I'm just going to clarify real quick because if so, someone might be reaching in a moment of stress, they might be reaching for control, and so then to replace that would be what else could you possibly use to feel that feeling of control? Someone else might be looking for comfort, right? That feel of like familiarity, right? So I'm just giving a couple of different examples of like what those emotions or what people are literally reaching for. And then because sometimes I think getting to that deeper level, that's where we're not doing that work, right? We're just kind of reacting, having the episode and then moving on, and not really getting to that deep. I love that. That's a great tip.
And one analogy I love to use with my people, and I actually use this analogy, can be used across a wide variety of issues, is a stop sign analogy. So we think of the Midwest, right? I always think when I'm giving this example, Iowa. I've never been to Iowa, but this is always the state that I think of when I give this example. Think of like the road in Iowa or the Jeepers Creepers movie, right? And it's just cornfields, straight flat cornfields, right? And there's just that road, and you can go like 120 miles an hour down that road. So I say you're a person and that's the road you take to work. You get in your car and there's never everyone on the road. It's flat. It's just you just go. You get in your car and you go 120 miles an hour to work. That is, we get triggered by something. We go 120 miles an hour, binge eat our feelings, right? What we want to do is create a stop sign. Because what happens if they then put a random stop sign in the middle of that road? You can accelerate to go to work 120 miles an hour, but now there's a stop sign. So now you have to stop.
Mhm.
And yes, you can accelerate again, but you will never have accelerated as quickly as before because you have to stop your car. So, one thing that we want to work on with emotional eating, especially when it can lead to binges, is creating those stop signs so that you go to engage in a behavior. Okay, what is that stop sign going to look like? And so it's kind of figuring out what are those stop signs. One of those stop signs could be kind of like, okay, I know this emotional hunger. I know I just want to dive into this bag of chips or whatever it is. Because I know specifically in the question, like it was like about like when they're on this like the health and fitness journey. So it's like looking at how am I going to feel at the end of that drive? How am I going to feel at the end of that binge? And not in a way to make yourself feel guilty at all, but to use that as information, as a learning experience of, okay, I know that after I emotionally eat and, engage in binge eating behavior, I am going to feel XYZ.
Mhm.
How do I feel about feeling those things? Not so great, right? And so kind of using that as information to go, you know what? Stop sign. Maybe I do not eat as much of the chips or as much of this, or kind of knowing like, hey, I know when I am emotionally triggered, I'm going to want to do this. So having those, extra foods available, whether it's cut up veggies, cut up fruit, so that you're able to kind of still fulfill that need, but not in a way that's going to evoke like a bunch of negative feelings. So again, just figuring out what those stop signs look like and then being present in the moment to be able to be like, okay, even if you have to say like stop sign, like what am
Yeah.
I going to feel? What am I going to do? Um, and one resource that I can recommend too, she is free on YouTube. She is called, it's very easy, the Binge Eating Therapist. She
Okay.
is from like the UK or something. She has a YouTube channel. She is amazing. She's from over there, and so she has the accent. Her voice is so
Oh, so
relaxing. It's
soothing, I'm
just
sure, right?
I just listen to her just because I love to listen to her voice. So I'll like, put on her stuff to just listen to it in the background. But she is a recovering binge eater. And she's a therapist over there. And so she is another, like, that's a great free resource for people that struggle, that want to understand a lot of the science behind it.
I love it. I think a lot of times it's just the awareness piece, right? Like once you're aware, it's like you almost can't unsee it. Once you've kind of, part of like shame and guilt is the more we keep it in the dark, the more it grows. It's like the monster under our bed, right? But when you can bring it out to the light and literally like share it with a friend, share it with a coach, sharing with the community, it's saying it out loud, like it dissipates it. It doesn't make the struggle go away, but it definitely makes it less scary once you know that you're not going through it alone, and that the awareness of like there are tools and resources to help with the process. It doesn't make it easy. So anyway, I super appreciate you sharing. I think that's super helpful, and I think even the verbal like stop sign, or even if people have to place a literal stop sign on their fridge or on their pantry door. Like, I just feel like that's such a trigger, like a cue to like, okay, maybe I do need something, but I don't need everything, right? Because it's that out of control feeling that I think comes back at us. Where like, it's not necessarily, and now I'll share part of someone I work with. It's not necessarily that I feel bad physically because my body can process the food. It's that I'm disappointed in myself because I did it again. Like I didn't want to do it again. I did it again. And then I'm like, I'm disappointed. It's not even the physical feeling of being too full or, indigestion or whatever it could be. So anyway, I think that self-awareness piece and having the resources is huge to help people get through. So I super appreciate. What do you think? Because the second question from members was for those who reach for food as comfort during times of anxiety or stress, especially with PTSD, what are some healthier coping mechanisms? So, like you talked about, knowing what it's filling, and then alternatives to filling it. So, for people who are looking to food for comfort, what are some alternatives that you would recommend?
So for that, it's going to be highly individualized.
Mm,
But how I kind of like to bring it to people is building themselves a toolkit for those times. And that toolkit will look different for everyone. That can be, something like hobbies. It can be something that will help in breaking that cycle. Because again, back to the road, if you turn to food for comfort, you're going 0 to 120. So it's like, okay, what is going to be, and especially if it's something that has been a behavior for decades, which a lot of the people I work with that struggle with this isn't something that's come up in the past 2 years. This is something I've done for 20 years, 30 years, right? So like that behavior is so strong and so automatic that we don't even always realize we're doing it. And so at first we have to be very mindful. It's going to take a lot of practice. It's going to take a lot of inner dialogue of feeling like you're crazy because you're going to be talking to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, dude, like you're good. You're good. You don't need to go get more. Like you're anxious, you're upset, you're this. It's going to take a lot of practice and figuring out what alternative is strong enough to break the cycle. Because it can't be something little, not at first, because at first that little thing is not going to be exciting enough or strong enough to divert your attention. Because when you are a person that, and like these questions all kind of like blend together,
Totally. Yeah.
but like when you're a person that has a tendency to turn to food for comfort, that tends to turn kind of into like the binge cycles. We tend to go into almost like a tunnel vision where it's like, oh, I'm really stressed. We're triggered, right? And then it's like tunnel vision. It's like nothing's getting us out of that tunnel. We're going for that bag of chips because we know
Mm-hmm.
that that's going to make us feel better in the moment. And so it has to be something that's strong enough to break our vision of that tunnel. Again, stop sign, right? And so looking at what are hobbies or what are something that you can do. I am a huge advocate of I call them mindful hobbies, because they don't take a lot of thought process. Because if you think of something that's going to take a ton of thought and you have to rip yourself away from this behavior you want to engage in to go do something that takes a lot of brain power, and it's like you got to prep up for it, and no one's got time for
It's
all
not going
that.
to happen.
We need
Yeah.
something quick in the moment. Yeah, we need something quick in the moment, but that's powerful enough to really just like engage your mind. A lot of times that is even with your hands physically engaging, because that's going to evoke a lot more of your senses, which just takes all of the focus away from everything else out there. Um, and so that's kind of my suggestion for that. And I know, I feel like sometimes those aren't very helpful because it's like it's individualized, build a toolkit, but it really gives you, I like to have people really get creative with it. Like, look at your life, look at what things you wish you could do, or you've been wanting to do, or get back into doing. Set up stations. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you can set up a tray or a box or something with a craft or a hobby that you've wanted to do that you never have time for, so that when you get triggered, there it is. Go pull the box out of the closet and it's all right there for
It's
you,
almost like
something
finding a
where
different
it's
kind of
just like you
like a
go
different
to.
kind of reward, right? Like, so say there's something that I don't know, you really like to color or crochet or I don't know, rearrange furniture. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that's maybe you don't normally have time for, but it's almost like instead of rewarding like that trigger with food, rewarding yourself in a different way because it has to be attractive, right? It can't be
Mhm.
like, oh, you're punishing yourself because you're stressed, go do 50 burpees. Well, who's going to want to do that? What about changing locations? Like, is there a benefit to say, I'm rereading The Power of Habit. I just reread Atomic Habits because again, these are books that I read years ago, but they're always just good reminders as far as like physical cues, right? So if you are stressed and you always go to the kitchen, like an alternative of if you're stressed, don't go to the kitchen, like putting yourself in a different space. Is that helpful?
Oh, 100%. Especially if you're around your kitchen a lot, or like, yeah, if you're stressed and then you go to the point of like where it all is, that is just going to continuously trigger you. It's just like, oh, I'll just do this. And then that can kind of lead to, so I mean, I do the same thing for myself. I'm in my kitchen all of the time. And so sometimes if I'm like overly stressed, or it's like I have a tendency to emotionally eat, and definitely I will emotionally eat over the physical hunger. And so it is, no, Brittany, shut the fridge, because,
Mhm.
working from home, it's also not every time you walk by the fridge, it's like, let me open it to see if anything's changed. Like, no,
Right.
you know. So what I've found though is, the physical act of just shutting the fridge, removing myself from the kitchen completely. Like I'll come in here. I do a lot of Diamond Art. So like I'll come in here and just put
Oh,
on
that's
something
fun.
on
Yeah.
YouTube and then sit at my desk and do Diamond Art. Um, and then that it breaks that thing again, another stop sign. It breaks that cycle of let me see what else is in the fridge. Removing yourself, even if it's like going outside, especially now, the weather is going to start getting nicer. And so even if it's just going and sitting outside, you don't even have to necessarily do anything. Just kind of like being out of that trigger environment 100%.
Yeah, yeah, I actually love that. Yeah, one of the habits we had to kind of put in place in our home is like the kitchen is closed at a certain time because what we were having was, some late night eating that was turning into uncontrolled eating. That was just completely unnecessary, right? And then that shame cycle, which we're going to get into. We're like, well, what the kitchen just closed. Like, there's no option for you to eat after 8 p.m. or whatnot. And that was actually helpful because it's a physical boundary to an emotional challenge. So let's talk about the shame cycle. I know that was one of our questions. When a lot of times I deal with clients who they'll have a bad weekend, bad, quote unquote, like they overeat or they didn't hit their goals, and then they'll almost spirals into, well, that turns into a week or turns into 2 weeks, and it's that I'm emotional, so then I eat, and then I feel bad, and then I'm emotional again, so then I eat again. How do we work through that cycle?
So part of that is going to be really working on repairing that relationship with food, because if you're going through that and you're having those bad weekends and emotionally eating, you are using food as comfort. um and I feel like all of this is like onion, right? There's so many different layers. um and so one of the things I had written down, like, to go over with that is to work on not making food the big red, because I feel like especially on like weekends when we're going to go to parties and stuff like that, there's a lot of foods brought up that we may not always necessarily, be presented with. And those foods, they become the big red button. No, don't touch the big red button. You don't touch. No, I'm not going to touch the big red button. Not going to touch it. But then you're presented with these opportunities or these triggers or this whatever it is, and it's just like, no, I'm going to touch the big red button, and then you make yourself pay for touching the big red button, and it does. It turns into this cycle, and so it's stopping the cycle again. The more stop signs. It just
Yeah.
they're very reoccurring. Um, and really having self dialogue with yourself. So one thing I've said to people, if they kind of go through that or they have a date where like, oh my gosh, I went to, this birthday party and I ate like 12 cupcakes or whatever it is. I'm like, all right. Now, other than you probably didn't feel too great physically, what happened? Nothing. What exactly? Nothing happened. Like, you did not gain 10 pounds overnight. Yeah, you may have some inflammation and salt retention and all of these things, but you know, nothing happened. The world did not end. Nothing shut down. You were still okay,
Mhm.
and it's really, and this is kind of like where also practicing comes back in, is practicing giving yourself grace. And I think some of what makes this really difficult for people is if they're involved in this process, right? They're on social media, they're on Instagram, even Facebook, definitely Instagram. They're presented with a lot of fitness influencers, of people that this is their livelihood, this is their job. And I think it's really easy to compare yourself to those people. Well, look at I bet she never falls off track. I bet she always, oh, I'm never going to look like her now because I ate 12 cupcakes at the birthday party. And what I like to remind people is you are not that person. Like, unless you are actually want to compete in a, I don't know what the proper term, bikini competition, whatever they're
Mhm.
actually called now, I don't know what it's called. A competition. Unless you want to be like a competitor, you going to a birthday party and eating 12 cupcakes, it make you feel physically like crud. It may mentally just kind of mess you up a little bit, but it's not a big deal. Nothing bad is going to happen. And you're a human. You are not a fitness robot. And so you are allowed to enjoy yourself. You're allowed to have those memories over macros days, like,
Hmm.
or a couple of them. Like, honestly, and I'll say this to people, like, no offense, who cares? You ate a
Hmm.
donut? Who, okay. Like, if it made you feel really bad mentally and physically, like, let's process through that, but then let's move on from it. Like,
I love
it's
it.
a donut. And that comes into where it's like, what are you gonna, you don't slash your other three tires because you got a flat. You don't, we don't
Hmm.
give up on everything because of one moment. It's the more we give ourselves grace, the more we learn to forgive ourselves, not even forgive ourselves, the more we tell ourselves, like, hey, listen, like, it's okay because I'm learning this balance. Like, I want to learn this balance. The more we don't put a negative connotation towards food, the more we start to heal our relationship with food. And then those moments don't become as big of a deal. Like, we give so much power to
I was just
food.
going to say that
Like,
you took the words right out of my mouth. The power that we give this substance over how we feel and how we behave, it's a thing. It's literally an inanimate object, right? And we put so much emphasis on it that I love that. You're like, take the power away, and then it's just calories. It's just food. It's just fuel, right?
and when you take the big red button status away from it and it becomes just food, it also becomes easier to say no to. So
Hmm.
if you feel uncontrollable, whatever it is, if you don't feel in control around certain foods, take the power away from that food and watch how your control is, because you're going to feel a lot more in control because the food no longer holds the power. You do.
I love it. I love it. And so many things, like even when you think about going on a vacation or to a birthday party, we feel like just because it's there, or we might not have the opportunity to get it again, that it's, oh, I better have it now. Well, do you really even want it? Like, or are you just having it because it's here? Or are you having it because you told yourself you weren't going to have it, and now you're like, oh, I'm like being rebellious and I'm having it. Like, there's just so many layers there. The onion analogy is just so true. Okay, so mental health myths, right? Because we're doing kind of a mindfulness mental health month in Fit Club with little things as far as like 5 minutes of meditation, outdoor walks, like these little tiny self care habits that we can put in our toolbox. But do you find there are any mental health myths that you would like to debunk with us?
Well, one of the ones that I thought of was just, I feel like a lot of times, especially people haven't been through counseling before, that there's still just this very ongoing stereotype of mental health issues being from TV. And it's that you have to be some insane, crazy person to go to therapy and everything like that. And I don't think people realize that the majority of people that seek out therapy are some of just the most run-of-the-mill normal people that know, like, you do not need to have these significant, like, intensified mental health issues. Like, it does not. And I feel like another thing is people fear going because it's like, oh, I'm gonna be like I'm gonna have a diagnosis and it's gonna
Mm-hmm.
be like this big ordeal. No, I I'm forced to diagnose people for insurance billing purposes.
Uh-huh.
Besides that, like, another one of my fun analogies is it's just 99, honestly, 99.9% of my client base are just people that are struggling. Maybe some of them have bigger past issues from their history and childhood issues. Sometimes it's more present moment. Um, but a lot of them, I use this balloon analogy, is if you have a balloon and you keep putting air in it, air, 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 eventually the balloon gets huge. And what happens? At some point, the balloon pops. So
Mm-hmm.
what therapy does is it allows you to get some air out of your balloon, because all of that air is going to be stress. I forgot that part. So our daily life is going to be the stress that comes in. some weeks or some years is going to be a lot more stress than others. And all that stress makes our balloon bigger. And therapy allows just like 30 minutes or an hour for us to release some air into our balloon. Doesn't take away all the stress, doesn't stop any other stress from happening, but it gives us more room for whatever life throws at us that week. And I am also a huge fan of really cliche old school sayings because some of them I find just some of the most true things
They
ever.
work,
And so
right?
one of those things is the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, because sometimes we have so much buildup and so much happening, and sometimes it's the tiniest little things, right? But it all compounds, the compound effect. And then it's like I have a lot of people that'll come to me and be like, I lost my mind and had the biggest fight with my spouse, or like tripped out on this person over glue. Like glue. Over like, why am I like, what is wrong with me? I have serious issues because I'm flipping out over glue. And I'm like, we're
Not the
flipping out
glue.
over glue. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. Like
Hmm.
that's almost like a trigger of like knowing that you have a lot of other stuff that you need to kind of release on, is when you are tripping out over those small things, because it's like those small things in our mind that is already capped out seem huge.
Yeah,
And so anyway, that's my very long answer to, I think like just a really big myth is that we feel like we have to fit, people have to fit this like this mold of what mental health issues look like to benefit from mental health, when in reality the majority of cases are just regular people that need an outsider that no one
totally.
knows, because it's a
Yeah.
safe space. You get to, I find a lot of times people struggle with opening up to even like their closest friends about things because they don't want to bother them, or it's like once I say it they're going to bring it up again, I don't want to bring it up again. There is a cathartic experience in being able to tell someone something and know that you get to walk out of that room, close your computer screen, and no one else in the world will ever know what you just said.
Hmm.
Like to be able to just unleash on people, not unleash on people, but just like let it all go, is
Absolutely.
just like,
Absolutely.
and,
Yeah,
and then
I
and then
didn't,
you get to be done.
right? I probably should have gone to therapy many, many years ago, but I went for the very first time at like age 35, and I'm 45 now, so about 10 years ago. And I was like, why didn't I do that sooner? It was it was literally life changing. And again, there weren't these giant, huge issues, but I think that it's so powerful, and exactly what you said is what I described. It's nice to go in, have someone to talk to that is safe, that knows enough about you but doesn't know you, so they're not personally related to you. And I also find, tell me if you think this is true. This is something that I just thought of. I think sometimes having to say it out loud and share your story, share what you're saying is, yeah, it's cathartic, but also it made me have to make it logical, right? Because sometimes I would like have all these things rolling around, but having to like explain it to someone made me have to explain it almost to myself. And I was like, well, now I understand. Like, but just saying it out loud was kind of that. So I am a huge fan of therapy. I know, I do agree with you. I think there's still some stigma out there. I think it's gotten way better. But even like our kids, so a lot of you guys know the story, but we had um, real big health issues with Sage when she was born, and it was traumatic for the whole family. Like we were in the NICU for like three weeks. Our big kids were kind of having to fend for themselves, and afterwards we're like, hey, if anyone needs to go to therapy, talk about this, talk about anything. And two out of three took up the offer. They met with someone, and of course, it spirals into other things. They're teenagers, into other areas of life, which was so great. But one out of three was like, no, I don't want to do that. I feel like there's something wrong with me if I do. And we're like, hopefully someday it'll come around. But there is still sometimes that stigma of I I feel like it's for broken people, when really it's not. It's for people. Like it's just like you go get a wellness check, getting a mental health check. I think is I would encourage anyone, if you haven't been through therapy, to definitely just give it a try, right? Yeah. All right. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. One of the things you had mentioned was, how do that kind of like that straw that broke the camel's back, or I love the balloon analogy, like even just letting out. some of the air inside. When because I think a lot of times people will try to struggle silently, or this is part of my thing. I was just keep pressing along, like keep moving and not deal with anything. When do you think people, or what is a good gauge for when people should seek out someone to talk to or seek out support?
I would say the biggest indicator is when it's really starting to impact your daily functioning in your daily life, you know. I think that gauge will kind of like look different for everyone. Um, but if you feel like you could use that extra support, if you feel like you can use that release, if you feel like, you know what, there's stuff that happened to me 20 years ago that I know is impacting my parenting right now or my relationship right now, but I don't know how to talk to anyone about this. I don't know how to process through it. I think all of those kind of things can be indicators of, hey, like it can't hurt, right? But I think like the biggest thing would be like if you feel like whether present things or things from your past are impacting you on a daily basis, reoccurring in your mind, that type of thing, would be a good, yeah, indicator.
Good time. Another thing I wanted to, as we were talking, to kind of bring up and get your opinion on, what do you think about trying out different therapists, right? Because I feel like sometimes there's someone you might click with right away that you're like my first therapist, I was like, this lady's amazing. Like, I mean, life changing. And because of insurance, I had to change different ones. And the other ones I was like, there's nothing wrong with them, but I just didn't click. And so I almost feel like if I had one of the second or third initially, I don't know if I would have gotten as much out of it. So the idea that it's okay to change providers, or I don't want to say shop around, but like look to different options. As a therapist, would you encourage that? Do you think that that's can be true as far as like client, that some people just click better with others?
100%. I think it is super important for you to find the right person, even if it takes two or three or four. I've seen a lot on even like social media groups that I'm in where people are like, oh, I tried therapy. My therapist, like, they didn't listen to me or I didn't like them. And it's like, no, go find another one, and even if you do like the person, like therapy is not going to be effective if you do not click with that person. And that can go both ways, but it's
Mm-hmm.
important for you to feel comfortable with your therapist because if you don't, you're not going to feel comfortable talking to them about things, if their style isn't right for you, you want to be able to communicate that with them. Like one thing I, try to hit home with my clients is if the way I'm approaching a situation does not work for you, like in this particular example kind of goes back to when I first started. I used to do like a lot of worksheets and things like that. And it's like, hey, like if that is not the right approach for you and it doesn't work for you, or if I give you homework assignments and you don't like it, please tell me. You will not hurt my feelings because if I don't know, I will keep going on what I think is right. This is not my journey. This is your journey. I'm here to support you. So I need you to be honest with me and communicate with me about what works, what doesn't work. And I was like, and I'll do the same for you. Like, I'll tell people straight up about relaxation stuff. I'm like, you can do deep breathing. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't teach it because I'm not a fan of teaching people to breathe deep. If you think that is going to be helpful for you, there's a ton of YouTube content
Mm-hmm.
on it. They'll teach you how to do deep breathing. I don't teach it. Just
Mm-hmm.
like having that open communication. And there have been clients where, we've met and I was not the right fit for them. And I'm always very transparent with people like, hey, like if you don't want to continue, you don't think I'm a right fit for you, I 100% respect that. And it's important for you to find a therapist that you do connect with. And so, if someone is starting out, especially like their first time, like if they go and they meet with someone and it just doesn't feel like the right fit, or, whatever the issue may be, don't give up trying because the right person will be out there for you and you will find that right fit. It just does sometimes take a few tries, a little trial and error with that to find a person that you can connect with and start to build that relationship with.
Yeah, I'm so glad we brought that up because I feel like you said, sometimes people might have tried in the past and it just didn't click, and then they think, oh, it's just not for me. where I think it is important to keep trying. And also, I think part of my mental health journey was writing things down. Because I had to switch a few times, it was helpful because I can almost like go to the second person and be like, here's what I've learned so far, right? So we can kind of pick up. But again, I think writing things down is very therapeutic. What do you use journaling or any kind of physical um, like mechanisms in helping people in their mental health?
At this point, I don't, unless they like journaling is always something I bring up to people. That's one of those things I'll kind of like go through different coping tools for during the course of the week to see if people like it, if people don't like it. So if journaling is something, I'm always like, hey, like, yes, absolutely journal, do that. Sometimes people are like, no, like I always say I will, and then I never do. And I'm like, okay, let's
Hmm.
not make things worse for yourself. So this will cross that one off the list. Um, but normally that's kind of something I leave up to the individual. What I will have them do though is in like in between sessions, I'll have them either keep whether it's notebook style or notes on their phone. I like them to do like bullet points of things that come up during the week because what I've found is kind of like when you go to a doctor's appointment. When the doctor's appointment is coming up, you're like, oh man, this is wrong. I can't wait to tell doc. Well, then you wait in the doctor's office for an hour. The doctor finally comes in, swishes in for 5 minutes, in and out, and you forgot to tell them like half of what
Right.
you wanted to tell them. And so I'm like, the same thing happens here is something will seem significant and happen during the course of the week. And then by the time you get to your appointment, a week, sometimes 2 weeks later, you're like, I don't know what happened. I'm like, put that in your phone. Like write it down on a piece of paper, like in your phone on notes, and I was like, because even though by the time the session comes, you either don't remember or it doesn't seem like a big deal, it was a big deal in that moment. And so I will have people keep like a running list, and I'll have people that come in and are like, get their phone out. They're like, all right, this is what I
Yeah.
got for you today. And we go through it bullet point by bullet point. Some things we can glaze right over, process through, no longer a big deal. Other times it turns into the whole session on one thing that happened. So that would be probably the most physical thing I kind of like incorporate with people. Again, that's one thing I kind of leave up to them, like if that's how they
I
do
think that's
best
such a great
with
idea.
processing.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know even with some of my kiddos sessions, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna cancel because I like I don't have anything to talk about right now." Where I'm like, "Well, 3 days ago you were crying over not being able to find your shoes, so maybe there is something you can talk about, you know." So anyway, I love that. That's such a great tip. So I know when we were kind of setting up this, session, not session, but like interview, you mentioned books that you have a few books that you'd like to recommend. So would you be kind and share some of your favorite resources with us?
So, okay, one in particular is an actual food book. So for anyone that really struggles with their relationship with food, disordered eating, the one is a great resource. The other two are just the one I'm laughing because the one is just so fun. I'll have to share that one first because now you have to know why I'm sitting here laughing because it sounds ridiculous, but it is fabulous. And I think that it can just be helpful in feeding that kind of like reward system, and sometimes food can feed into like the dopamine hits of like the food can feed into that reward system and just gaining more confidence in ourselves. And when we're gaining more confidence in ourselves and just our daily life, I think that that radiates to all areas of our life.
Hmm.
So anyway, this is I think this book was like $7 and most ridiculous sounding book ever.
Oh,
It's
yes.
called Eat That Frog. I
Yes.
love this book.
Yes.
So yeah, just about like getting that one task done that you don't want to do first thing, cross it off your list, and it's normally the most important and usually the most like the
Yeah,
easiest.
because a lot of
Um,
times, so I think is it Brian Tracy? Is that the author?
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Eat the Frog by Brian Tracy. Um, it's one of those things that sometimes the thing that we're avoiding, it's sucking away our mental energy because we're avoiding it. And really, if we just got it over with, then it's just done. It's like think of all the things that you're just like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. If you just do it and get it over with, like he says, like if you the worst thing you do today is swallow a frog, then like your life is still going to move on. Just swallow the frog first and get it over with. Okay, I love that. That's such a great one.
And then this next one is called the Dopamine Detox.
Okay.
Again, those two, these are like very short reads. I think I read this one in 2 days, maybe.
Who's the author
Um,
on that one? Because I don't think I've read that one.
I'll have to message it to you. There's no way I'm going to be able to
Oh,
pronounce that.
okay. 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 We'll put it in the notes. I
It's
know there's
it's
another one called Dopamine Nation, and that is, I'm not going to remember her name right now, but similar as far as like how dopamine works and what, like the process. Actually, she was an addiction specialist and then started putting together the connection with dopamine. And that one was super interesting too. So tell me why you like that one, the dopamine detox.
This one I liked because I felt like it helped me in getting calmer. I'm a very go, 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 go. And my mind is always going. I physically have to always be going. It's like I'm, I know this goes against what so many people say you should do, but in order for me to get up in the morning, because I'm up at like 3:15, 3:30. So the first thing I do when I like open my eyes is check my email. And not because I care who emailed me or that I read them, but it's like the bright light in my eyes, that kind of thing. Because at 3:15, I'm up and going. And I don't stop. And I know that that is not the best for my stress levels. And so that kind of helped me in like shutting down some of the tabs. I don't know if you've seen like the reel that says like there's like 12 tabs open and I don't know what's going on like on your computer. Like I feel like my internal computer always has 12 tabs open. And I felt like that was just a really good tool in helping me decrease the number of tabs.
Okay, I love it. Okay.
Um, in the last book, and this is going to be the book that I I recommend to anyone that has any type of slight negative relationship with food. This is called Eating in the Light of the Moon.
Mm,
This is by Dr. Anita Johnston. I did a CE class run by her. So she ran the webinar and it it's how women can transform their relationships with food through myths, metaphors, and storytelling. And I did this class and it was the most intriguing, interesting, just like mind-blowing class I had like information like I'd ever experienced because one, if you can't tell, like I love metaphors and I love like connecting things. And that is how she dealt with it. And she doesn't label them like eating disorder. She says disordered eating. But it's all like think of like Aesop's fables, but for disordered eating and relationships with food and understanding why we may have these negative relationships with food. Like I'll share one really quick. That was the one that just like hooked me
yeah.
was thinking of using food as a coping tool. Think of it as a log. So you're in a river, and all of a sudden the river turns into like the white rafting type river, fast going, right? And you're struggling. All your friends are on the shore way down there. So, but you're having trouble swimming and keeping up because the water is just rushing around you. So this log comes rushing by, and you grab onto the log, and you're able to hold onto the log the whole way down the river. And then you get to the calm part and you can see all your friends on the shore and they're all like waving like yo come over here like you're safe and you're holding on to this log and you know you all you have to do to get to the shore is to let go of the log and you're sitting there waiting in the water holding this log and you're like but this log saved me. So I don't want to let go of the log because this is what
Hmm.
saved me, but I know I need to let go of the log to get to the shore. So it's like the thing that saved you is also the thing that's stopping you from being free. And the same thing can be applied to having that disordered eating. Like a lot of times when we are turning to food at to cope, like it's saving us from a negative emotion, right? Like it's fulfilling some need that's not being met. And to let go of that coping tool, one is hard because it's become so ingrained and automatic in our brain, but
Hmm.
it's like we want to have food freedom and we want to have a positive relationship with food, but that would mean letting go of the law.
Hmm.
And it can be very daunting and overwhelming to do that. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's one of
No,
those
I love
things
that. And
that is
one of the
in this
funny
book.
things is in our household we have some binge eating challenges, and one of the things that was brought up is like it's not like alcohol, whereas if you really wanted to, you could give up alcohol for the rest of your life and it's not going to affect you, right? Food, you need food. So the hard part is sometimes this thing that, has kept us safe and we are, reaching to for comfort, we cannot get rid of 100%, right? Because it's actually, we need it for nourishment. So that mental work of going through like how much is for necessity, how much is for emotion, like that's where I feel like what you do is so important to help people work through the differences in that. Like you were saying from the very beginning, what am I eating because I'm actually need nourishment, and what am I eating because of an emotional tie? So what you do is so important. So anything else you want to share with us, like maybe we miss, or in any questions or things that you think would be helpful? This has been so great so far. Anyway, even if we had now, I think it's been awesome, but I don't want to miss anything if there's anything you can think of.
Um, I think for the most part, I got everything that was on my list. One thing to just for people to remember is that a lot of this is individualized and a lot of this is going to be learning and trial and error. It's going to be finding what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what are my triggers, what are alternatives that I can do. Because, we have those trigger patterns. So we're triggered, we have a thought, we have a behavior. So where can I insert stop signs, and learning how to become aware, because all these things just become so automatic,
Mm-hmm.
and being gentle with yourself through it. Because I think, like, I'm sure you can attest to this, and a lot of the people, if they're in like our age bracket, um you know things are a lot different now than when we grew up. So when we grew up, or when we were like teenagers through, and even young adults through a time period where, weight training and our weight, like those were looked at completely different
Mm-hmm.
than they are now.
Mm-hmm.
And we are undoing not only decades of our own thoughts, but society's thoughts.
Totally. Yep.
And that's not something that is going to come overnight, in 8 weeks, in 2 months. Some people may be able to do it a little bit more easily and a lot quicker. But I think for the majority of us, stepping away from what the scale says, stepping away from wanting that, like having our worth be involved in the scale, and not understanding that it's okay. Like, I think we came from where you did repress emotions, like emotions weren't talked about because therapy was a lot more, had that stereotype,
Mm-hmm.
it had a stigma. And so we're not used to expressing emotions. We're used to focusing in on the scale as our worth. Like, we are undoing decades of thought patterns and behavior patterns. And none of that is easy. And so as
Absolutely.
you're
I'm so
struggling
glad
and
you said
feeling
that.
like guilty over it, one, remember you are not alone, because there's a whole generation of us that are
Society.
all
Yep.
undoing the same thing. And two, like, it's okay. And the best thing you're doing for yourself is recognizing, like, hey, like, this is these thought patterns, these behaviors are like no longer serving me. So what is my solution for that? We know the problem. Now let's find the solution. And we know what that benefit is. The benefit is going to be, feeling better, having food freedom, having more confidence. And what does that look like for you? And then building that toolkit for yourself to get there.
Oh my gosh. That is like the perfect spot to end on, because I totally agree. It's like, I think we beat ourselves up because, again, there's this society that we were taught skinny is better, 1,100 calories is all you can eat. If you exercise, you're going to get big and bulky. And honestly, all of that is BS, like,
Mhm.
but we're having to rethink it. And I think, I'm just so proud that now my daughter's generation and your son's generation, even more so, we are totally rethinking body image and what is strength and what is health. And I'm like, I'm here for it. So thank you so much for bringing that up. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise with us. I'm going to put in the notes in the video, your contact, whatever information you want to share, your Instagram, email, how people can get a hold of you if they would love to work with you. So I'm just so thankful for you. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. It was so fun.
I know. I love it. I love it.